mainstream media gone insane or what? I turned on my TV the other day to the devastating breaking news that over 800 Haitians alone having now lost their lives to Hurricane Matthew, and it's about to hit landfall in Florida sometime later tonight. A vacuous, shrill, bubble-headed bleach blonde with a gleam in her eye frantically imparted into the camera with a smile of sensationalistic glee on the Fox TV news set. God, I wonder who that might have been. And now WikiLeaks has just released segments of Hillary Clinton's $250,000 schizophrenic Goldman Sachs speech where she shamefully pledged to support everything this globalist bank is all about, including wide-open borders, free trade, and a big banking hedge fund oligarch's globalist marketplace worldwide wet dream, while still perpetuating America's U.S. jobs and manufacturing shortfall, continued monetary hemorrhaging, and the American trade deficit imbalance that feeds off you and me, the productive, hard-working, tax-paying slaves of a dysfunctional Obama economy. That's right, you and me, the commoners, the hard-working salt of the earth that pay the freight and do all the economic heavy lifting in this country. Well, which is it, Hillary? Telling Goldman Sachs you really stand for their elitist globalism in one speech? And in another speech, telling the God-fearing, religiously superstitious, medieval Christian basket of deplorably ignorant, unredeemable American common people that you really stand up for them? So tell us, Hillary, what do you really stand for? And why should we ever believe anything you say? You vile, wretched, self-promoting, lying, fork-tongued snake. And while all this earth-shatteringly important hard news is transpiring in real time, the only thing the mainstream media and the RNC can report on 24 hours a day is the salaciously overhyped Donald Trump male locker room banter story from over 11 years ago. God, why do I smell the stinking agenda of big corporate-owned mainstream media and Capitol Hill's status quo globalist protecting RNC? Could the motive of this fabricated Trump-hating rhetoric be any more obvious? Shame on you. Good God, we're hurting in America. And in the massive wake of her illegally deleted, character-indicting emails, the only thing the Hillary shilling New York Times can talk about is more sensationalized, unsubstantiated, slanderous, character-assassinating, salaciously libelous 30-year-old, obviously contrived female testimony against Trump? Give us a break. Americans are smarter than that to fall for a strategically timed, openly orchestrated trash Trump smear. It all kind of makes you wonder just how far New York's grand gray old lady of news has fallen from credibility and grace in front of the rest of the world to have now succumbed to the corporate economic globalist seduction of the Clintons' paid propaganda machine. So what of Trump's integrity in front of the American people? It's this simple. Trump stands for a constitutionally compliant, pan-politically inclusive, nationalistic, populist-driven, socio-economic change that embraces the people's agenda, not the big corporate wealth of the RNC or Hillary's globalist insider Goldman Sachs promoting economic monopolistic status quo. But since it has now become the big corporate mainstream media oligarch's fashionable flavor of the week, and the RNC's establishment marching mantra to thrash Trump, I feel it my patriotic duty to elucidate one and all to the benign motivational nature and origin of these would-be damning male-specific locker room verbal expressions that, in reality, have absolutely nothing to do with the actual integrity of this man, his love and pride for his family and country, or his healing vision for America. As a now retired 20-year tenured professor in the California university system, I've devoted the lion's share of my sojourn through academia attempting to unravel the mysteries of the gender-specific, anthropological, biological, instinctive behavioral routines that drive all men and women. I shall therefore endeavor to impart from this digital lectern a modest but insightfully needed syllabus on the subject to all who might pursue a greater understanding. First, we must define the clinical term instinctive behavioral imperative. This term means exactly what it implies, the operative word here being instinctive or hardwired imperative, if you will. This term, by definition, insinuates dominant behavioral routines that function at the subliminal level, completely independent of all objective choice or free will, and, as in this case, self-actualizing behaviors that are inherently gender-specific in nature. No matter how well educated, cultured, and accomplished a given female subject may be in today's complicated, competitive, and some say even overly civilized society, she still, by the nature of her female gender alone, is subject to the subliminal routines of her own instinctive subconscious imperatives. In other words, she's on an instinctive female-specific quest of self-actualization specific to the autonomic behavioral functions of her gender. To accomplish this, she, quite subliminally, seeks to acquire the 3 Ps from all potential male suitors, eventually selecting the one finest, most masterfully accomplished male specimen she can possibly attract to fill her one self-actualizing, idealized, lifetime female pair bonding agenda. So what are the 3 Ps, you ask? Well, good question, and I'll answer you. The 3 Ps delineate the active subliminal motives of her anthropological, biological, instinctive, self-actualizing subconscious imperatives when interacting with the male gender that define her need for protection, provision, and procreation. Ergo, the 3 Ps. Despite the most vehement old-school feminist objections of my esteemed colleagues Gloria Steinem, Naomi Wolf, and Camille Paglia, these needs are still nonetheless immutably hardwired into the female psyche and summarily affect all her conscious behaviors that would facilitate the successful acquisition of a permanent male pair bond scenario. On the other hand, the male anthropological, biological, instinctive, hardwired imperative is to impart his reproductive genetic information into the general female gene pool at large with as many potential separate partners as possible as to prolifically enhance the greater progeny numbers of his own genetic footprint. So, as defined by cursory summary, the female would ideally seek only the one lifetime partner to fulfill her every emotional need as defined by the requirements of her instinctive 3 Ps mandate, where, on the other hand, the male instinctively seeks as many different female partners as possible to fulfill his one and only need, being that of sex. That's right, men and women inherently do work at cross purposes here. And ladies, if you don't like this hardwired male gender-specific behavioral arrangement, you can take it up with the general architect of your dissatisfaction, God Almighty himself, because it is, in fact, how every man is hardwired to feel, so better start getting used to it. And since it is, as by God's grand celestial design, that we go forth and multiply, you might understand sex to a man is a subconscious, hardwired, intemperate, daily addiction that men can't deny. It's like an insatiable Jones, not unlike that of a raging cigarette habit. He just got to have it. In fact, we are so autonomically hardwired to instinctively pursue it, it is, for a man, his single collective common source of shameless, conscious distraction. Scientific studies have shown that most men have about 400 invasively conscious, sexually explicit thoughts a day over random women in their casual sphere of visual contact. And yet, to their astonishment, we're not the scumbag dogs women seem to think we are, but just normal men. I mean, all normal men have these feelings, even the so-called goody two-shoes men among us, whether females care to acknowledge this fact or not. Think about the implications of that fact, ladies. Your boyfriend, fiancé, or husband walking next to you in the supermarket while you so carefully and lovingly examine the produce counter for dinner tonight is now actively looking over your shoulder, lost in a lustfully gawking, sexually explicit fantasy about being with that hot young millennial college chick at the checkout stand. And you're quite self-delusional if you think your loving man is not incessantly engaging in these random sexually explicit thoughts on a daily basis. Ergo to wit, the enormous sums you ladies spend supporting the cosmetic and fashion industries worldwide, and all the other self-beautifying lengths you go through to keep yourself competitively alluring at all times just to ensure his focused, exclusive sexual interest in you, and you alone. Think about it. Every man has these sexually explicit fantasies about females hundreds of times a day, unbeknownst to you, as per the behavioral mandate of our God-given, hardwired, reproductive, instinctive imperatives. Just remember, though, these inherent male behaviors are not meant to be hurtful or disrespectful to you. It's just how we're hardwired and how we feel about our own sexual expression. Alas, women will never understand this about us. Just ask comedian Whitney Cummings, who's built an entire career that would burn your ears off with her sexually salty expletives, angrily complaining about it. But just so you know, it doesn't mean we love you, our marriage, or even our kids any less. It just means that's how we are in the wild. We were created perfect and correct in every way, just as God intended us to be. The unabashed creators, Darwinian wild dogmen of planet Earth, after all. And we need not apologize for it to you. So how about at least a friendly smile for us, ladies? And also keep in mind, Trump's locker room banter that society would reactively chastise and deem so despicably offensive is, in fact, quite normal, and only the male's attempt to dissipate the incessant, unrequited, gnawing tensions of this would-be random, prolifically impractical, female instinctive, sexually expressive imperative. Innocent enough, I'd say, as all men of all ages frequently engage in this type of locker room banter in their private conversations with one another to relieve these sexual tensions. And, by the way, folks, before you chastise Trump, keep in mind, academically speaking, that the stuff I speak of isn't some existential, exploratory, radically esoteric behavioral social theorem I just pulled out of my ass. It is, in fact, basic, sound, primary, foundational Sociology 101 that any PhD level colleague's peer review would verify. So, I'm sorry if you're shocked, ladies, but all men have these thoughts all the time, the only difference being that Bill Clinton and Bill Cosby acted on theirs and Trump didn't. But what I do find distinctively offensive is the blatant Trump-hating mainstream media and RNC agenda feigning their sanctimonious, self-righteous moral indignation over Trump's locker room comments that were willfully and surreptitiously taped by a character-assassinating mainstream media agenda during a private locker room conversation between a couple of guys not intended for public scrutiny in front of mixed company. Then, after an 11-year hiatus sitting mute on a shelf in Access Hollywood's film vault, it was maliciously resurrected as a weapon of orchestrated character-assassinating release on Trump just after the second presidential debate. Every one of these mainstream media and RNC pussy male hypocrites are subject to the same anthropological, biological, instinctive sexual imperatives that all men experience and express every day, and that I've clinically outlined in this brief academic symposium. So you know their sanctimonious, self-righteous moral indignation is not really about Trump's locker room comments or alleged misbehaviors as the male-dominated mainstream media and elitist status quo-protecting down-ticket RNC would like you to believe. As the hypocritically rancid members of these contemptible male-dominated power-lusting media institutions, such as CNN and MSNBC would like you to believe, consider the fact that they are all quite guilty of invasively thinking about, if not actually expressing out loud, the same locker room banter as Trump. In fact, it would surprise you to know this would apply to every male in America over 12 years of age, ladies. These mainstream media and RNC hypocrites are just trying to advance the destructive ploy of that smoke and mirrors locker room ruse as a self-righteous stratagem to publicly assassinate Trump's socioeconomic plan of great rectitude for the American people. I know these Trump-hating hypocrites are hoping Trump loses, but are much more terrified by the prospect of him actually winning, as Washington's parasitic globalist leeching free ride off America's wealth would abruptly end. Well, I got news for you. It won't work. Americans aren't stupid, and Americans are plenty disgusted with the RNC's elitist Clinton-Bush-Romney-esque globalist Council on Foreign Relations' big corporate Goldman Sachs agenda to screw over the American working man. You think we don't know that Paul Ryan's RNC and Hillary Clinton's DNC could care less about you, me, minorities, millennial college females, needy Latinos, and all Catholics and Christians, and our well-deserved collective shared prosperity for every American? Hillary's only concern is to manipulate and squeeze every possible dollar out of your pocket into hers as they all protectively circle the wagons of their own status quo-driven elitist globalist greed while filling their coffers with your hard-earned money. All this makes me wonder just what fantasy constituents to the pompous, politically correct RNC's down-ticket House and Senate Trump defectors think they're protecting their precious re-election campaigns from by not aligning themselves with Trump. Don't these stupid bastards get it? The vast pissed-off Trump army across America are their constituents. God, open your eyes, you morons. And then there's Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. God, what a swishy, temper-tantruming, jilted chick excuse of a man this guy is. Just look at this image of Ryan flamboyantly frolicking on the floor of his frat house with his flaming frat boy brethren. Put up the image. Put up the image, Vinny. Talk about locker room, juvenile grab-ass sexual shenanigans, if you'll notice. The frat boy with the red hair and his eager head buried between Ryan's legs is about to graphically go down on him as in an act of flaming homosexual tongue-in-cheek effigy. The other boys, with gay tongues extended, ardently ready themselves for their turn with Ryan. So now who's calling the disgustingly shameful kettle black, Ryan? Quit worrying about Trump's locker room banter and quit embarrassing yourself in front of America's Republican Party. Hey, Ryan, in lieu of this morally hypocritical image of you exhibiting your obvious gay alter ego, Americans were just wondering if you had any capacity at all for self-honesty, or, for that matter, how you're actually perceived by the American voting throngs for Trump. If you did, you'd be able to delineate the difference between the fact that Trump's a real man whose gallant lead I'd proudly and personally follow into battle for my country, by pathetic comparison to yourself, an effeminate frat boy pussy poof that this image so disturbingly implies. Just remember, Ryan, you feckless, power-drunk wannabe, you don't speak for me or the vast Trump army, nor do you represent today's breakout liberating values and agenda for my beloved new pan-political Republican Party. So, you just might try losing your pompous, tantruming, sanctimonious, self-righteous indignation against Trump and get your sorry ass back aboard the Trump train where it belongs, along with the people's voting consensus and their duly elected RNC Republican candidate for the presidency of the United States, Donald Trump. And while I'm at it, why do I have the overwhelming suspicion that after this election, Mr. Speaker, Hillary'll be in jail and you'll be looking for another job? So, folks, just ignore all the mudslinging crap out there and do what's best for our country. Don't let Hillary Clinton's Middle Eastern Finance Criminal Foundation's campaign propaganda machine distract you and steal the election. Let's all patriotically get out the vote for Donald Trump's vision and make our America great again. In Washington, I'm Dave Thomas.
The preceding broadcast was a news service of Gibraltar Studios International. You may email comments to commentary@gibraltarstudiosinternational.com.